Welcome, black. Disco hard in the hit like bats. Took my Sabbath, I can relax. Like boomerang, I come right back. Like boomerang, I come right back. Just like yo-yos, come right back. Don't be no-shows, come right back. Don't be loco, come right. Look, welcome, black.
You don't walk around with your head down going,
yeah, wait, hold on. This is the big thing. I think that sometimes people think that there's an expectation that once you acknowledge your privilege,
right,
that you need to feel guilty about it.
Right.
And
Speak on that.
And actually, there's
man.
a lot of people that I'm close with that are like, that are with it on a lot of things.
Right.
But they say a lot of stuff to me that's like, evokes like this guilt about being white or something. And like, dude,
wow,
that's not it. Like, if that's where you land, that's not it.
I've heard that term a lot more recently.
White guilt.
White guilt. Yeah.
It's not good. Like,
right.
No,
and that's never like. Again, I'll speak for the people that I know and myself. Like I've never like I never want to have. I never want white people to feel a sense of guilt for being. I think white people are awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Like I really do. Like I really think I love. I mean, I'm married to a white person. I love the white people in my life. I don't think that there's anything wrong with being white. I think that there's just things that, as a white person, that you just have to acknowledge. And again, yeah, it's not like you walk around. And again, I agree. You know, we grew up very similar. Mm-hmm. You know. We had very similar backgrounds, but there's tons of things in my life that I know I have privilege for. I remember, you know, my parents would always take us out to certain like homeless shelters and, you know, like around the holidays to serve and different stuff. And you would see how, man, I definitely am privileged. I mean, I didn't like say that phrase when I was younger, but like I definitely have, you know, privilege and advantages. But what that caused me to do was like, man, what the advantages that I have, like I want to be able to help serve those who are less fortunate.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I feel like that's all that like, but like that's what I'm asking for. I feel like that's what most reasonable people, when they're talking about privilege, are asking for. It's not that you walk around with the sense of white guilt or with your head down going, oh, I'm terrible because I'm white. No, it's like most of that was out of your control, had nothing to do with you. Those are things with your historical context or your ancestors or whatever. But acknowledge that and then use it. Like when you have advantages, like use that to help platform people and to like, you know what I'm saying? Like encourage people not to just belittle it and to go, well, it doesn't exist. Cause I think that's so harmful to when clearly, like it'd be like me going to a homeless person and be like, oh man, like there's no difference. You know what I'm saying? Like it would be so insensitive, so ridiculously like stupid and just, you know what I'm saying? Just to be like, oh, well, you know, like,
yeah, I think like the thing that makes it so hard is that like so for example, like even like when we talk about white people, black people or whatever, right?
Right.
I feel like personally, I understand that it's hard because like, I think even calling people, oh, it's a white person, a black person, like that's kind of stupid.
Right.
Because it's just human.
Right.
But I think that means something different to somebody else than it does to me. Like, so it's hard. Like, so when I say it's stupid to refer to somebody as like black or white, like I really mean that.
For sure.
You know? But I also simultaneously acknowledge that on a social level,
right?
Like
that's the way
it's something that is actively like decides how we interact with different people.
Totally.
And it has relevance. Like there is a necessary component, but I think people talk about that and they think you're black, so this and this and this and this and this way.
Right.
And it's almost like some people it's almost to like a genetic level.
Right.
And it's like well,
sketch.
And hold on.
Right.
But this is my point is that like that's what makes it so hard is like everyone interprets those things differently. And it's like, no, the reason, say that you're a white person,
right,
the reason that you and I are different is not because like, sure, like our skin's different and all these like arbitrary dumb things that don't really matter.
Right.
The reason that we are different is because of how the world engages with us.
Yeah, for sure.
And also how like we have continuously made actual like actionable like policies and ways
Right.
that different groups of people have been interacted
Yeah.
that have affected us on multiple levels.
Right.
Like
For
socioeconomically.
hundreds of years. Yeah. Totally.
And socioeconomically does not mean just money. It means multiple different factors.
Totally.
Let me just be super clear about that. That affects the way that we are perceived on a macro and micro level,
Yes.
individually,
Right.
as on a societal level.
Yeah.
And that is why we are different. That is why there's a reason to actually engage with this, because it's like, if we just pretend it's not there, it's
Yeah.
not going to get fixed.
Totally.
That's not how it works. Like,
Especially when and again, this will be a deep cut for some of you guys, but especially when your country has literally been founded and been ran that way for 70+% of its existence. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, like imagine if you, I mean, just like that doesn't make any sense. Imagine if you knew someone and for you go 70-80% of their life, like they had a behavior problem, and you'd expect that you wouldn't expect that just to change just because, like, if they didn't acknowledge you, like you'd be like, hey, if someone's been smoking for 70-80% of their life, you don't just expect them to one day to wake up and go, I'm not going to smoke anymore, without addressing and being like, you know, here's some processes to like
you have
break that
to
addiction.
you have to do something about
You
it.
have to. You can't just go, oh, well, just stop. Like, it's like, well, no, like that's like something that's been a part of your existence for a long, and to break that cycle, you have to have some kind of intervention, some kind of like, you know what I'm saying? Whatever that is. And I feel like obviously America has never really done that. We think we have, which is a whole different conversation, which actually we should have that one next. I love that conversation.
We can vote now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm okay, you know, we have a holiday. And it's like, well, but we've never really addressed that
segregate.
issue.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, the idea of privilege can be so pervasive but can continue for such a long period after, when it's like, man, this is an issue that really, I mean, it is complex. I know you said it is complex, but it's not really in the sense of like, when you look at it, clearly exists. It clearly exists. Like, there's so many examples that you could point to where it's like, I don't understand. What do you mean it doesn't exist? Like, it.
Yeah.
You know,
I think at the end of the day, people. So I brought up the point about how. What was the first thing I was talking about? Frick, I totally forgot.
You said a lot of things.
Yeah.
a lot of good things.
There's that first point I was making about how there's like a negative. No, that wasn't it. Well, I think honestly, at the end of the day, there's just a negative connotation behind the word privilege, and I think that it's hard for people to realize that, like, we are, you know, we are connected and we are a product of our environment and the people around us and stuff like that, and the things that we didn't have control about that affected who we've developed into, and like, we have agency. You have agency to do with what you are able to control. You are able to control. So it's like you only have so much agency over yourself,
right?
Which is kind of weird to think about, right? And it's a little bit scary. Like,
but even the idea of agency, because I've heard that. I won't even bring it up. But so I saw this. I saw this kind of was a response. Well, agency. So wouldn't the self-agency take over? You know. And it's like, but yes, everyone has self-agency over their life, but self-agency doesn't negate outside influence.
Yeah.
So to say, again, you can say, look, you know, you have self-agency to change your, you know, quote unquote circumstances, which you do. Everyone does, 100%. But it doesn't negate the fact of the socioeconomic statuses around you, or the like, you know, outside, like that doesn't negate if there's systems and programs and policies set up designated for you to fail and make it harder for you to succeed. Mm-hmm. Yes, you have agency, but you have to acknowledge that those things exist.
Yeah.
And or that those things may not exist for other people.
Yeah. Like somebody was,
and like that, like I don't have I believe in self-agency, and I believe in the idea of, again, we just kind of mocked it, but the idea of, yeah, like, don't be a victim. Don't like blame stuff on, well, I'm not here because of privilege. No, like, no one should say that. And if anyone does say that like they're being stupid. That's so stupid. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that when you see someone and you go, man, obviously they're trying and they're making efforts, but their efforts might not be as far along as someone else, you have to understand that there is very much might be a reason to why that's happening.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge that, I just think it just, man, like that, I think that's just, that's something that needs to happen more, not to belittle white people and not to like victimize black people. But I think once we get to that level, then we can really start having conversations about how we can leverage that privilege to help elevate certain people. And that's a benefit to white people too. Like that's not like, I think that's also, and I think this is like one of those subconscious things. I think that's where sometimes white people, again, no one would ever say this as a white person, but I think it's like, well, if I give away that privilege, then it's like you're losing something. It's like, no, actually, you're actually bettering your community in such a way. Like, think about how much more America would be like unified and be, you know what I'm saying? Like how much better things would be if we had
if we significantly reduce crime and the
right.
you know, homelessness and like the amount of like people that are, you know, having to like, you know, work. Never mind.
Just attention and like and the other things going on, like even just that alone,
the ability of like for people to collaborate, the amount of infrastructure to be able to develop if people weren't put into these situations where they were like basically set up to fail.
Everyone, and
then all the people that like don't graduate from high school or from college and stuff because like it's just dumb. It doesn't make any sense. Like,
I've never used my privilege to help someone else out and then regretted it later.
Yes,
never.
No.
I've never done that. I've never been like, man, I helped them out too much. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or man, like, you know, like yeah.
Yeah, I think about it. It's like somebody said this. Sorry, my throat's hurting. Somebody was like saying this thing where it was like, you have two people making like the same amount of income, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like they're hanging out or whatever, and it's like one guy has like full constitution of his body, and one of them's like paraplegic, but they make the same amount of money. Like, would you say that they're like one of them isn't privileged? Like, you know what I mean? It's just
yeah.
And I think that's the thing is like, if I can walk, I don't feel bad about not being able to walk, right?
Right.
I'm like,
totally.
I'm sorry, I don't feel bad about being able to walk.
Right.
I just that's just something I have.
Yes.
It's not that big of a deal. I think that's what frustrates me is like people like, and you know, or people think that people are saying, and some people might be saying this and they're dumb,
right?
But like, if somebody says like, oh, you have this privilege or whatever, you know, and it's like you've been through all this hardship. You have a black friend that has a more affluent family than you and stuff, or all this stuff, like, but like, you're white and he's black or whatever,
right?
Like, the thing is, it doesn't negate any of the hardship you've gone through,
right?
Or to have a privilege. Like, I'm not gonna air out all my dirty laundry, but there's stuff I've gone through, and there's friends of mine that are in worse situations that have never dealt with any of that stuff. And like in different ways,
right,
that intersect. There's like intersections of different things.
Totally.
We have all these like complex ways that we may or may not be privileged, and it's just like, I guess it's just such a non-issue, and I don't think less of people for being white. And it's like,
right,
oh cool, like you don't have to deal with this BS and this and this thing that I deal with,
right? Like,
that doesn't make you less than me. That makes you. I'm actually really happy you don't have to deal with that.
Totally.
Why would I ever want anyone to like deal with this and this thing?
Totally.
All it is like oh cool, like hey, there's this thing I deal with, and I guess for me it's just like, I think the you know, the whole thing is just, it can like, I feel like this idea of like having things afforded to you that you didn't ever have to do anything to have in your life is for some reason bothersome or like deeply troubling for people.
Right.
And I don't think, and I don't understand. I personally just don't understand where that comes from. Well, maybe it's like this.
And like, I look at it as like similar to that, but even maybe a little bit slightly different is like everyone in America, not I won't say should be, but I just wish everyone in America, like again, I wish everyone had the privilege. Like I'm not upset that white people have privilege.
Neither am I.
I just want to make sure that everyone, whether it's black, whether it's even just Hispanic, brown, brown people, I want everyone to be able to have that level of like privilege, because it is great. Like, and I mean, I've, military family, I've had the privilege of living in a lot of different countries. I lived overseas for a long, like, I know that like America is great. And I know that there's a lot of things about it, a lot of freedoms that we have that like a lot of countries don't have. And I totally like recognize that fact. What I'm saying is I just want that to be consistent amongst all the people that call themselves Americans, or even just live here in America. Like, even if you're an immigrant or different things, like there's things that we can do to spread that privilege out, because we want everyone to experience like the greatness that's America. And not like, I mean, I'm trying not to be facetious, but I just feel like that we can, as Americans, we can do a better job of making sure that everyone is afforded that privilege. And I'm not, as a black person, I'm not trying to take away your white privilege. I'm not. I'm just trying to make sure that like I'm just trying to share the wealth. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, at least for me, like that's the way I look at it and see it. Yeah. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I don't want you to walk around and hang your head in white guilt. I think the idea of white guilt is so stupid. I never, ever, my goal is to never, ever make white people feel bad for being white. Just like you should, like black people shouldn't feel guilty for being black. Like, God, my idea of faith and what I believe God made everyone the way he wanted them to be. And like, there's like, he knit you together in your mother's womb to be who you are. And like, there's pride that you should take in that. And
yeah, it's your skin, dude.
It's just
it's like
you know what I'm saying?
Like, at the end of the day, it's your skin. Like, it's really dumb that we even like have anything going on where we had people deciding that there was like some kind of hierarchy based off of like how people's skin tone was. It's stupid. Right. And I think that like slave, like it. Oh, this is another one. Sorry, this is. I feel like this is the juiciest one.
I think we should stop the podcast and go to part 2.
Now let me say this, and we'll continue after that. But like, this idea that like white people have to like apologize or amend.
Yes.
Let me read that back. Apologize for slavery or something. It's like, yo, no, like, I've never said that a person like, oh, you enslaved me and all this stuff. Right. What we're trying to say is there's repercussions for that stuff. Right. Or like after effects of all that crap we went through. Right. That's still happening. Right. What I am pissed about is that we've like that currently, it's not just a debate of like, I don't even know if this is like that people are like, oh, slavery wasn't that bad, or Jim Crow and all this stuff wasn't that bad. That's what I get pissed about, because that's BS. This is like, and if you say that,
slightly different, but on that same, I was just reading a report, and I've seen this before, of how I think I just read a report. I think it literally was today or yesterday. Like a quarter of like, I forgot which age group it is, but like it's like millennials or something. But a quarter of millennials like don't even believe like the Holocaust ever happened or was worse than what it was. And it's just like that idea of like
Holocaust denialism. Yeah.
Like this, it's just kind of the same idea of like things that like as we kind of move further away from things in history, that there seems to be groups of people who actively disseminate or sorry. I don't know, right? They spread they disseminate misinformation about certain errors or certain things that happen in history, and it's like, and you see that now. People are like, well, yeah, like it's like, no, clearly America benefited so much from like when they were gaining free labor from millions of people. Yeah. And you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just be like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. And it's like, what are we talking about?
I feel like a lot of times it's just like, they just say Jewish or black people. And it's like, yo, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. It's crazy.
But yeah, my point, like, yeah, no, dude, like, fixing systemic racism is not about like white people being guilty about slavery and all that stuff.
And I've
if you
seen
are
that.
like that, that's super weird.
I've
dude.
seen
like,
people be like that, like, why you want me to apologize for my whiteness? And I'm like, who?
Nobody's asking
asked
you
you
to
to do
apologize
that?
for
Like,
your whiteness.
I've
We're
been,
saying
like,
yo, let's
yes.
fix this stuff so that we can get rid of it
Yes.
and be done with it and move on.
But I feel like, again, that's part of that wall that goes up.
Yeah.
And I get, I'm doing my best to not get political on this podcast, but there is definitely a certain group of people
Yeah, sure.
that perpetuate that kind of argument, and it's just so frustrating because it's getting in the way of a conversation that actually has to happen.
Some people just hate black people, bro. And then let's be real, dude. Hold on.
Facts.
And then it's like, sorry, I feel like I have so much to say off of that point, but it's just
Then
like,
we should split the podcast right now.
no, I know, maybe, but like, I guess my last point is
Sure.
just that, like, yeah, dude, like, okay, this is my point. If you are angry or bothered or frustrated about the state of affairs for black people and how they've been treated, like, in the past and up until this point, that is, like, you are completely allowed to have that feeling. Like, own it. And it's like, it doesn't have to come from this place of, like, feeling guilt or like you own that. It's like you can just be mad for people because you don't mess with that.
Right.
That's not cool with you.
Right.
And you don't need you don't need black people to validate that feeling.
Right.
You are completely allowed to have that feeling in and of yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I think of people, I've had people like ask me stuff. I do this to people now a lot. They'll ask me, are you angry? Like, oh, should I be angry about this? And it's like, well, are you?
Right. Like, why should I tell you?
I remember, like,
Right,
and it's something that I appreciate about, I'm not going to say specific names, but like, this person basically confronted somebody about like saying the N-word or whatever. And that person, and this is why a person that was confronting them. And this person's like, whoa, this black person said this, that I could do this and this or whatever. And she's like, no, I don't care what they think. I'm pissed that you did it.
Right.
And I was like, that's sick. Because that's what it's about, dude. Like, you don't need black people to validate how you interpret or feel about this.
Happening,
it's your responsibility. It's not other people's responsibility. Right. And I think, like, but if that's going into I feel guilty, that is for you to figure out.
Right.
That, like, it's like, I'm not gonna, I don't want to be mean because I'm sure, like, there might be people where it's coming from a good place or whatever, but like, you don't have, there's nothing to be shameful, feel shame or guilt about. Like, if you've personally done something to somebody, then that's a different story. Right. But if it's about like slavery or Jim Crow and all this stuff, it's like, it's one thing to be like, yo, I'm pissed that happened. Right. I don't ever want stuff like that to be, I don't want the repercussions of that to exist anymore. Right. At all. That's one thing. Right. But if you're like, man, I have to like go to apologize to every black person I meet and I have to like feel really bad about this. And then it's like, that's not it. That's not like, it. It's like, we're not trying to like rewind.
It feels like it muddies the water for the conversations that needs to happen. And that's what bothers me. It's like, again, it feels like the great thing you talked about is like, that there's things that we can do to like alleviate the repercussions of those eras and those conversations that we need to have conversations about. But we're not even having conversations about it because we're having conversations about white guilt, which is not beneficial for anybody. Nobody cares. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't care. Like, we don't want you to feel guilty. Like it's that's cool. Not it. Like, yeah.
The only reason that slavery comes up in the conversation, it's not to like be like, oh, let's get a time machine so we can go back and it happened. Right. It's done. Right. The reason that you talk about it is because there is relevant information from what happened that it has carried over and affected what is happening still to this day. Right. That it's just like, come on, like we got to end it. Like let's just end it with what we have right now. Right. If you don't want to be on that train, you don't care about it, then I don't care about what you think. I'm sorry, like I don't care. Right. I'm with the people that want to fix it. Right. One way or another, let's get it over with. Right. Let's finish it so that it's done. Right. And it's like, cool. Will there be people that are individually racist and stuff, and plenty of other people like collectively that still feel racist stuff and are angry at black people, hate them or whatever? Sure, I don't care about that.
Right.
Like, I can't do anything about that.
Right.
The best I can do is talk to people. I don't want to talk to racist people. Like, I don't care about that.
Right.
What we're talking about,
Right.
just so that everyone's listening, is systemic racism. If you don't care about that, or that's like, or you just don't have the capacity to engage with all the details and the complexity that goes into that, because it's a complex topic, then like move on. I don't know. Like, I'm sorry, dude. Like,
yeah.
If you are down to listen to us and what we're talking about, that's cool too. And you know what? I would like to, like, you know, if we can affect some people on an individual racism level and like interactive piece, like of that or whatever, then yeah, like I'm down to like have less racist people and people that are insensitive. But like, I don't know, y'all. Like,
yeah, well, and I think that it's a good way to end this episode in the sense of, I mean, look, I've been having some great conversations with people about different stuff, either from the podcast or just in general. I've been, you know, being vocal on social media and whatnot. I've had some conversations that weren't so great, but you know, like there's definitely, I think there's definitely impact to be had, and I would, here's what I would say about this episode and ending. I feel like this is something to where, again, like most of these things, on an individualistic level, I think this starts with the conversation. This starts with empathy. It starts with having conversations with someone who maybe thinks differently than you do, who votes differently than you do, who thinks differently about this topic than you do, and have a conversation with them, not an Instagram or Facebook comment section, like back and forth with them, but just being like, look, this is something about privilege that maybe, like, I don't know if I necessarily agree with, or I've never seen it this way. Can you, like, explain to me or give me your perspective on this? And just start there, and don't end there, but start there. And like, I think that this is something that where there's a lot of really, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. There's a lot of just, again, really weird, just muddying of the water of this conversation that honestly needs to happen in a lot of different ways. And let's start making some changes. If that's something that you're about, if you're even like marginally interested in making a change and making an impact, you know, people always talk about, well, if I was alive in MLK Day, I would. Okay, well, look, you're not alive in MLK Day, but you're alive right now. And so, like, let's have, like, be a part of the solution, be a part of the progress of us moving forward. And for you, it might just start on an individualistic level. There's other things that we need to make changes on like a, you know, in policies and the government and different things that need to happen. But for sure, like, start having some hard conversations, or at least having some conversations that, you know, like you wouldn't normally have. Start there. Like, that's really important. Like, I believe that stuff's really important. I've had conversations with people where, you know, they're like, wow, I've never ever thought of it that way. I've never ever, you know, had that perspective before. And then that's what leads them to start thinking differently about policies and voting and all different stuff, you know? Yeah. So,
yeah, I guess. Can I say one?
Yeah. End it. You end it.
Wait, Bella, I forgot what I was going to say. You were saying something good and it got me going. Some
about conversation?
Yeah, I think it was like, whatever.
I was talking about conversation and engaging with people.
Yeah.
People think differently about
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yo, I swear, dude, if I see any comments like with people saying stuff like, yo, well, Michael Jordan like has like millions of dollars, or Obama was the president. It's like, you don't, like, I promise you, if you have any urge to like send something like that, you do not get what we're talking about.
Facts.
Like, you're not understanding it, and I promise you have nothing relevant to say, and you should just go read or try to figure yourself. Figure it out. Have somebody else explain it to you, because you do not get it if you have any of those urges. I promise you. I'm not lying. Like,
not to start open a whole other thing, but I think this has so much to do with just maybe social media and how we want so badly to comment back, send a video. Well, let me tell you about so and so. That, hear me, start a conversation.
Yeah.
With someone who thinks differently, who grew up differently, who has different context for everything, because that's how you'll learn to expand. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that they say. Doesn't mean that you have to, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that you have to be like, okay, like, yes, but it starts with a conversation that goes, hey, and that conversation starts with you listening. And the reason why I say you is because everyone thinks the other person should listen. No, it always starts with you listening. When I have a conversation, I'm thinking about listening. And you should be thinking the same thing, because what happens is we just start arguing and trying to prove my point. Well, you should watch so-and-so, and these stats say this. Just start a conversation, and then walk into that conversation with the mindset of, I'm going to listen. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to be attentive. I want to try to understand where they're coming from. And I guarantee you'll start to see some change. But if you come in with I'm going to show you, you don't understand, then you, like Gage said, you don't get it. And honestly, you should just bow out of the conversation and go back to whatever you're doing, because you're just making it more difficult for the people who want to have conversation and make changes in this area. That went really well. You said privilege. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be good.
Yeah.
It went well.
I'm really interested to see how it goes.
Hey, guys, we're so glad that you're hanging out with us again. If you enjoy this podcast, man, make sure to leave a like. If you're watching on YouTube, if you subscribe, if you're on Spotify or Apple, subscribe.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button.
Share with your friends.
Share it with
your
your
mom,
friends.
your
Text
dad,
it to somebody.
your racist friends.
Send it to your racist friends. Follow us on Instagram. We're so stoked to hang out with us. We're back every Friday, Black on Black. My name is George. And that was
Black.